Thanks for joining me to watch this Q&A. During this Q&A, I'm going to have a chance to answer a couple questions that I missed during the live Q&A, and you're going to hear 4 unique perspectives on the GDMBR, racing the Tour Divide, and unfinished business on the Tour Divide.
So we're going to shoot for about an hour, and at the end, we're going to do a lightning round, which I'm really looking forward to, where we're just going to ask a lot of questions, best and worst of on the trail. And I think everyone here is familiar with the Tour Divide. We don't really need to explain that or the GDMBR or anything like that. But if anyone has any questions about it, feel free to ask. And with that, why don't we start off? And Carley, why don't you guys, you and Aaron, introduce yourselves?
Okay, I'm Carley. And I rode with Aaron, my partner, and our little toy Aussie Rowdy, who's asleep right now. Hopefully he'll wake up later. Very excited to be here tonight and hopefully share some lessons learned and some highs and lows.
Yeah, I'm Aaron. We rode the GDMBR, so from the Canada to Mexico border-ish. Why am I blanking?
He represents the taking a recently adopted bike packer woman along a trip, because he's done things before, but this was my first multi adventure. So
I didn't realize that. You're quite a professional for having the first.
Definitely someone that could share what it's like to, if you've got a partner that's kind of, you'd like to get them into it, he can share on that experience, I would say.
All right. Rob, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Rob. I'm the Canadian of the group. Chris will know that everything that was Canadian along the route, whether it was a movie star or song, I made sure Chris was aware that it was Canadian that sang it or wrote it or presented it. So I'm in Toronto, Canada, freezing right now. I was saying to the group when I first got on that it's actually warmer here today than it was on July 4th when we woke up at the campsite that morning. So, my reason for doing the Tour Divide was I was at a bit of a point in my life of wanting to make a bit of a change and do a bit of self-discovery, and the Tour Divide's been on my bucket list since I saw the movie 10 years ago on Ride the Divide, and I was, that's what kind of got me motivated and had me in my back of my mind that I always wanted to do this, and I had a plan that when I turned 55, I would do it, and I turned 55, well, last year, but I was 55 when I did the ride. So anyways, and I'm speaking for
Chris.
What's that?
I said, who watched Ride the Divide more, you or Chris?
I think Chris still has me beat. Yeah, and I'm going to take the perspective of the rider who has unfinished business, because I only made it to Breckenridge. So when we're answering questions, keep that in mind.
Only.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
only
Jeff.
a couple dozen miles.
Chris?
All right, Chris Smith from Medfield, Mass, outside of Boston. I rode the Canadian Heritage Trail last summer. It was the Tour Divide. I did finish. It took 48 days. Part of the reason it took a little slower than at least I expected was the reason I rode. My story is a little odd if you are not familiar with it. I am legally blind and I have no central vision. And 15 years ago, a social worker handed me a white cane and told me I'd need that to be able to get around. And to celebrate 15 years of not needing a white cane, I decided to do a big mountain bike ride. So took a little longer than expected, but got there in the end.
Amazing. So how did you guys all meet on the trail? You guys met at different points. I think you left each other, met again, and curious how you all got connected.
I think Rob should go first, because it's kind of like you guys met up north pretty quickly.
Yeah, maybe I'll start and then Chris, you can continue.
Sure.
So we actually met, but we really didn't have much of a conversation on the very first day at the campsite. I just saw this guy with a stuffed animal, and I really didn't have a conversation with Chris that day. You know, I got up the next morning and I took off on day 2 on my own, and we met up later on the day. And Chris, I think you do a good job of explaining how the rest of day 2 went and how we really met.
Well, we've only got an hour, so we can't get too much into day 2. But day 2 is an epic day. Yeah, I noticed you because you had a cap on from a little niche bike packing supplier, and that I had used as well. And yeah, we didn't really run into each other again until right about the nightfall of day 2, when we both found ourselves accidentally climbing the second giant mountain pass of the day. You know, in the wind, in the rain, as the sun fell. And I think I passed you because you were out of food and bonking, and I didn't realize it. We didn't know each other, and I went up ahead, and then it got to be really dark, really scary. It was, you know, it was really slick mud with a cliff on one side, and you know, it was tough to stay upright. You know, and the circumstances were getting pretty real and pretty legit. And so you caught up to me. At that point, I think we made a pact to stick together for safety reasons to get to the bottom. When we finally got to Fernie, you know, spoiler, we made it down. We got to Fernie, ended up that there were so few hotel rooms, we ended up splitting a room. And I think by 2 that morning, we were old friends.
Yeah. You left out a key part though, is the ground. It was at the top, it was snowing and raining and the ground was freezing. And I think I crashed first, and then you came up and asked if I was okay, and then you carried on. I was okay. You carried on, and then a couple of minutes later you had crashed and I got caught up with you. And I think that was the moment we decided for safety reasons we should go together.
Yeah. And then we ended up riding together. I think, you know, we both took a rest day the next day because it was pretty rough and the weather was bad. Stayed together again, and then just started riding together. And I don't think at first we were really trying to ride together, but it was kind of like we were both riding the same speed and going the same direction, and it worked out pretty well. And yeah, I think, you know, pretty quickly after that, we enjoyed just riding together. So I think
that all this happened on the second day of the tour. Like, it was already intense just because you're starting this crazy adventure, even for the people watching, all of us dot watchers out there. But the fact that you went through this crazy night on the second day was very intense. But actually, that leads into a lot of people had questions about like all the emotions, and you know, what was your lowest moment or scariest moment and best moment, and how did you handle like being in these scary environments, sort of isolated by yourself? Because even on the second day, you only saw really Rob. Everyone was kind of spread out already. So how did you guys handle that? And was this the scariest moment?
For me, no doubt. The night of day 2 set the tone for the rest of the ride. I came into this thinking, you know, I'd ride 18-hour days and sleep a little bit. And I literally had a point at that night where I stopped and looked over the edge and said, you know, if I go over, it's game over, and no one will even know about it because there's no one else around. And Tour Divide's important to me, but it's not worth dying for. And from then on, you know, I was much more cautious and, you know, considerate about when we rode and didn't ride. And that lasted the whole way through. So Rob, do you?
Yeah, from a riding perspective, yeah, that was the scariest riding for me. Yeah, it was, and even for me, who could, you know, has decent vision, just, it was so dark, like just black, dark, and like Chris was saying, that off to the right, it was just the abyss, right? You couldn't see, all you could hear was a river raging below. You couldn't see what was below. So it was spooky, and no one wants to be on a mountain at that time of night. I think when we both started up the mountain, it was daylight, thinking we were going to get over it in daylight, and it was like midnight when we got over the top. It was crazy.
Chris, you mentioned that you had planned to ride a certain number of miles per day. Ross actually asked that question: how many miles a day did you plan for, and what did you actually do? Carley, did you have a similar experience where you planned an errand for a certain amount and then you're like, had to reset your expectations?
For sure, yeah. Like, I think I knew I was going to have to build up for 2 weeks on trail. That was kind of my plan. But I had hoped to be about 70 to 80 miles a day after 2 weeks, and that just never happened. So we did hit a couple of 70-mile, 80-mile days, but that was not the norm, and I had hoped for that.
I think we quickly realized that planning the mileage wasn't necessarily the best method, but planning for the elevation, trying to do a pass, especially through Montana, getting our feet and butts in gear, doing a pass a day or two passes a day, were big days. So doing it by that was probably a better method, at least for touring and not racing.
Carley and Aaron, when did you start relative to Chris and Rob?
So we drove up to, we took a U-Haul with our bikes, and Rowdy was the easiest way. We're from Oregon. We took a U-Haul basically up to Whitefish area, rode to the border, and we started the same day as the Grand Depart in hopes of meeting and seeing all of you racers pass us by. In the beginning, a lot of the racers were, passing us in the middle of the night and whatnot. So we didn't actually see a whole lot of people in the beginning. It was kind of like mid of the pack and end of the pack. We started seeing more people. I thought that was cool. But we did run into some issues where, like, as tourers, we're like taking up or having trouble finding accommodations various places. So I don't know if I'd recommend others, if they're thinking about touring, doing the same thing.
How many miles head start, right? And people may not know, but the Grand Depart is out of Banff, and that's, I don't know, some number of miles and days before you get even to the U.S. border.
I think we were 3 days before we got there.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so we were definitely ahead of the Tour Divide folks. Yeah, we started on the same Grand Depart day from the border of Canada. But yeah, you guys were 3 days behind us. And we didn't meet Rob and Chris until Lima. And that's when we intersect, which is, there's a lot of parallels to life, your life journey and your GDMBR Tour Divide journey, as far as the people you meet in life, or the people you meet along your Tour Divide. Some pass you by, move on, you only meet them for a little bit, and some stick with you longer. And I think that is part of the Tour Divide GDMBR, is that 24 hours is like, I don't know, 2,400 hours in like normal life. So much happens in those 24 hours that the person you meet on day 2, like, you go through a lot, and you are bonded now forever.
So
Actually,
feeling isolated, it almost seems like you guys never really felt that isolated, because you always knew that, there are people that you've met nearby, and then there's the trail magic. Or am I wrong about that? Did you feel this sort of sense of isolation being out on the trail on your own? Maybe Carley and Aaron, you guys were always together. That didn't apply to you as much, but
it was weird, because it was like this slinky where you'd be out there during the day and you'd be completely isolated. You might go, there are actually times where I'd go for 2 days or 3 days without seeing another person, not just talking to them, but not seeing anyone, and then you'd end up at a diner with 10 other riders. So it was this weird sort of like oscillation between feeling very isolated and on your own, and part of this huge community, this tribe that's moving down the path altogether.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that question whether you're going to see people again, right? Because you don't know if they get, if they're feeling good, they might take off and you might never see them again, right? And then it was always nice every couple of days you kind of see people that you'd seen earlier and had a chance to reconnect with them and see how they're doing and get some intel.
Yeah.
I think rest days play a big part in that. So I think rest days play a big part in that, because I think a lot of people we'd met that were faster riders that would take a break, and then you catch up, and then and then you leapfrog, and then they catch up.
To put
Robert,
that meeting point in perspective, so I just looked, and that was roughly day 15 for Chris and Rob that you guys met, and so it would have been 12 for you, Carley and Aaron. So just to give everybody a sense of when that happened, relatively early, but still with a bunch of miles under your tires.
Well, and then I think Carl and Aaron and Rob and I parted ways in Pinedale. And to the point a minute ago, I don't think any of us had any idea that that was going to be the last time we saw each other. That's at one point where you go through the basin that the Tour Divide route and the GDMBR go different ways, but they come back together. And I think at that point, we were just off sync and we never met up again. I think that was the last time we saw you guys in person.
Yeah, I was always amazed, Chris, with your videos. I knew you and Rob were somewhat riding together, but Rob was rarely in your videos. So during the day, you guys got spread. Unless Rob, you were sort of hiding in the trees while Chris was taking videos. I wasn't sure.
No, that was kind of, we would kind of agree on where we were gonna kind of have like lunch or where we were gonna camp that night, and then we'd ride probably the first 45 minutes together, and then at some point one of us would be, somebody would drop the other on a hill, and then it'd be a couple hours before you saw them. And it was great because you had a chance to spend some time by yourself, but also you knew you were gonna reconnect later on.
Yeah. Glenn asked, with all this time alone, what was your favorite song? I mean, I know that you guys all had headphones and were relied on music a lot to sort of keep you company. Was that true across the board?
No.
Podcast, for that matter.
I'm in my head, and the scenery and being in that moment more than distracting myself. And like when I did, I think it was kind of I need a distraction to get this grind done.
Yeah, Mary mentioned some people don't use them at all. It sounds like, Carley, you're one of them. You just
I
in the nature
know
sense.
home. Yeah. I brought the headphones thinking I would struggle with that, just hours of just you need something to do with yourself. But I mailed the headphones home and only listened to music, I think, on one climb. And I made a very intentional climbing playlist full of just the power climbing, like U2's Elevation. And, I only listened to that once on speaker on my phone to get up that one hill. But
yeah.
So
Chris, you were big into podcasts, right? Weren't you?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So same sort of situation where, when I was training, 15 hours a week or more, I'm always listening to podcasts and I'd run through them all. And so I built up, like Aaron, I built up a huge queue and they sat unplayed for the most part. I listened, so part of that is I realized, I think on day 2, everything I brought on my phone could be thrown into 3 buckets. And it was like, training for endurance sports, which, no thanks. Survival stories, which after night 2, no thanks. Or like Stephen King spooky stuff, which again, like after night 2, being out there alone in grizzly country, no thanks. So it took a little while and I ended up finding some audiobooks. And I listened to a few audiobooks, but same sort of thing where it's like the percentage of time that I spent with a headphone in, it wasn't 0 by any chance, but it dropped way down. It just wasn't as important. There's just so much to be there.
Yeah.
And Chris, that triggered a question from Doug, who asked how much training you all did.
So before we get into the next question, I just wanted to add my 2 cents. I did take some podcasts, I took some music, and I generally only listen to it when there was tough days. When you're just grinding it out and you just need something to distract you. In particular, there was 2 passes in Colorado that you have these large baby head rocks and stuff like that. It was a tough grind, and it was a hot day. So those are the days I put podcasts on just to try to distract me and keep me in a good spirit and keep me motivated. So anyways, let's go on to the next question.
Chris said 15-ish hours a week. Rob, Carley, Aaron?
I was about the same. Yeah.
We didn't really have a great training plan. Probably could have done more. Basically, we just did saddle time. We weren't really going for distance or intensity per se, but just time in the saddle, and a lot. We did like shakedown stuff with the gear. Rowdy was a very late addition, so for me, there was a lot of swapping out of how am I going to carry all this stuff in the last like 3 weeks up to the ride.
Yeah, but as far as training, because I was concerned, like I honestly wasn't sure I'd get past 5 days and have to go home getting out there. I just wasn't sure. But so for training, all I focused on was like every other weekend or every weekend, it was training ride weekend, and we'd do a long ride Saturday, Sunday, or an overnighter. We did a lot of shakedown overnighters as we got up to it. Yeah.
Carley's never done a century ride. Like we did not ride one before we left, and I thought maybe we would get one in during the ride, but that never happened. Just kind of goes to show you that you don't necessarily need to be able to ride 100 miles to go do the thing.
Yeah, you kind of train. You're gonna get in shape on this ride one way or another, right?
Yep.
Chris was nice enough to post his Strava year-end stats to put everyone else to shame. Basically, what was it like? Some ridiculous amount of total climbing.
6,100, and it was almost all off-road.
Yeah.
So I'll just add to the training. So Chris and I kind of matched each other on the number of hours we put in, not knowing it, but about 15 hours a week on average. So I thought I was going into it in really good kind of aerobic and anaerobic shape. But if I was to do it over again, or when I do it over again, leading up to it, I will do significantly more weight training because the bike is heavy. You're not used to pushing that kind of weight, even if you're doing lots of aerobic work. And I might do some things like hiking with a weighted backpack just to also help build up that strength and endurance for when you're doing those hike and bike sections. I thought that'd be very beneficial. At least I think it'll be beneficial for me.
So I did. So just a little, quick dip into the training plan. So I have a coach, and what basically ended up doing was a low intensity rest day, Mondays and Fridays, structured interval work for an hour and a half a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the weekends. Back in November, December, started at about 2 hours a day, and then climbed to 8 hours a day or whatever, closer to when we left. And same sort of thing. I ended up rolling those into shakeout rides and doing a lot of overnights, or integrating it with going down to my mom's house for her birthday and calling that an overnight, getting 2 days of training and that sort of thing.
You've also done the Leadville 100 a few times.
Couple. Yep. Yeah.
Well,
So I mean, no joke. That did help for altitude, for endurance training like that. Yeah, I think for me personally, mentally that helped, and certainly 4 years or 5 years of training for the Leadville helped here.
And I'd add to that the altitude actually got to me about the 4th, 5th day. The night I had a really tough time sleeping. Woke up with just a screaming headache from sleeping at altitude. Here in Toronto, we're pretty close to sea level, and then just being at elevation the entire time. It was not something I was used to, and there's nothing I can do here in Ontario to train for it. So it's just something you have to acclimatize yourself to. So if I was to do it over again, when I do, I like to get there maybe 4 or 5 days ahead of time, just to give myself a little more time to acclimatize and get used to the effort that it takes to ride at altitude. But it is a factor, and if you're going to race the Tour Divide, you need to factor in that the thin air is going to get you at one point. So anyways, continuing on.
Nice. Well, we have a lot of questions about gear. So should we talk about some gear? I guess we could start with, what bikes are you guys riding?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I used a Specialized Epic. It's a 2019 hardtail. So I ran front suspension, carbon frame, new paint job now. Paint job didn't survive Tour Divide. That with I had a set of Hunt wheels on it with a dynamo, a Son dynamo.
Nice. Yeah, there were some questions about how we did the charging. I'll get to that. But Ross also asked, how heavy was the bike? What was the weight of yours?
So mine was, I had the stats here. Well, dry was 61 pounds dry weight, which I think is 27.7 kilos. So once I added water, and I estimated with the water and food when we were going across the basin that day, I probably started the bike was probably 80 pounds with all the water on it. So pretty heavy.
Okay. Yeah. And Chris, I know that you have the classic, you rode the classic bike, but had some reservations afterwards about whether it was the right choice. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was wondering what bike to run, and it looked like, you know, everyone was running the Salsa Cutthroat. They all know more than I did, so that's what I went with. And it's an amazing bike. It's a workhorse for me because, oh, and I did swap out the front fork for a RockShox Sid SL 100 mil suspension fork. And then I used a suspension seat post and a Brooks saddle. And wheels from Noble with a Sun Dynamo in the front and a 1x-axis drivetrain. Yeah, for me, I hit a lot more stuff out there because I don't see it in time. And running a hardtail may not have been the right choice because my bike dry was 74 pounds, I think. And so, you know, the whole time I just kept thinking that, yeah, I'm hitting these rocks with the rear end and there's nothing to absorb that other than my tire and my gear. And so, you know, if I did it over again, I'd probably look for like a cross country mountain bike or something. I don't know, certainly run some bigger tires. I had Renee Harris Fleecer Ridge 2.2s, which were, you know, on the smaller side. So, you know, I'd probably run 2.4s or something.
Nice.
So Carley and I rode Y Cycles, a cottage company out of Colorado, now Rebel. They're titanium hardtails, front suspension, both running 120. We had 2.25 mezcals, like everybody else uses. We ran Cushcore, well, not, it's Mezcal's version of Cushcore, and just the rear tires and not the front. Bike weight, I never weighed my bike. I was afraid to.
Actually, we broke the stand at the bike shop, so that's not good.
But I know it was less than my bike when I rode the Great American Rail Trail the previous summer, and that bike was 95 pounds. So I know I was under 95.
Well, how heavy is the Rowdy kit there?
Yeah.
Well, Rowdy is about 16 pounds, and then
Wow, that's an amount. Actually, right there.
we used Old Man Mountain racks because they have a through axle attachment point for the additional weight.
Right. Yeah.
And then like these milk crate kind of baskets. But yeah, maybe he adds 20 pounds with the extra water you carry in his, you know, little bits. But Carley carried the food. That was our.
That was nice. Rowdy has extra motivation though, so you know he pays for the weight in motivation. You know, speaking of the racks, and Doug had a good question about how many kits did you guys bring, and how did you keep things clean? Like, seems like, you know, things might get a little raw out there on the trail.
Oh, is that this?
What's that?
So I don't know exactly what this is, but Aaron threw it in my kit before we left.
It's so shame, but like bed sore, bed stuff.
It smelled terrible.
It smelled worse than your clothes were smelling, or are you able to clean your clothes pretty often? Doug actually asked, did you wash your clothes in streams? Yep.
So like I carried a single bib, like an under bib, like mountain bike style. I wore mountain bike shorts and like a wicking sleeveless shirt, and then over that I had a sun hoodie. I basically wore the same thing every day. In town, I had a pair of lightweight swim trunks and an extra t-shirt that sometimes I also slept in. We hit towns enough, like, I mean, you would get to smell bad, but you also get to a town in 3-5 days that had, you know, hotel that we could wash our stuff.
Yeah.
I did not wash anything in a creek or in a bucket. Mostly because you're like the wait time for everything to dry, you just didn't want to risk it much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Trail.
Yep.
Chris, I thought you were washing your stuff in sinks a lot. Am I wrong with
Yep.
that?
Yep. Because I mean, hotel might have a laundry, but I don't know, it's just easier to use a sink.
Yeah.
Standards get pretty low out there. For me, I took a totally different route. I went with no chamois. I used just wool, and then mountain bike shorts, and then a custom Rafa jersey, which I had brought 2 of, but one got crashed in a crash on day 1. So I had just 1 jersey for the whole thing. And I will say, not a single saddle sore, not a single issue. If I were to do it again, I'd do exactly the same thing. Although I trained with it, so that's important to note that I didn't go out there chamois-less from, you know, on day 1 for the first time. You know, I trained with that and built up to it.
So to get to Ross's question, sounds like, Chris, you approached it maybe counterintuitively, no chamois. How about the rest of you? Did you do anything special besides chamois cream?
No, but what I did is if I sensed something coming on, I'd put chamois cream on before going to sleep at night.
Mm.
A friend of mine told me that a couple of years ago, and that I didn't have any saddle sores as well. I was good the whole trip.
Nice.
Yeah, I wore a chamois. I only brought 1 chamois, and chamois butter every day. That's like how you started your day. And then, but yeah, at the end of the day, it was all about nightly. Like, you know, I put that other stuff on, and then chamois in the morning.
Yeah, I unconventionally, I also wear like underwear with my chamois. I view it kind of as like wearing like a silk weight sock underneath your wool sock to prevent additional friction. It worked great on the Great American Rail Trail when I did it. I did have some starts of saddle sores, basically from being wet. I don't think I would change anything. I think it was just a circumstance of being wet. As far as cleanliness, like bringing the wet wipes and being very particular and making sure you're cleaned up before going to bed.
Yeah.
Is super important, I think.
Yeah, we've heard some kind of nightmare stories about people not keeping clean and getting bad infections. There are plenty of people that had to quit the race because of saddle sore. So Mary also said, yeah, use Lysol wipes to clean up. That makes a lot of sense. So
Oh, it sounds like Mary's maybe saying she used them, but she wouldn't recommend them.
I did
okay.
not use them, but I heard somebody did. I would not recommend them.
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
Who would do that, Mary?
Who would do that? Anybody on this call tonight that I have?
Yeah, Mary, thanks.
This
It's Mark.
is
Thanks
Marty
for calling me
from,
out.
Yes,
And it was quite savage, but it worked.
from Wichita, and veteran, done it several times. And you know, it's all in the details. And I'd gone to the store and picked up my supplies, and I go and pick up my wipes and little packet, you know, and peel it off and use it. And it's like, man, my bottom's on fire. Well, I get to Brush Mountain Lodge and I have Clorox wipes. It's like, you know, you idiot, Marty, you've done this before, and you bring Clorox wipes. So anyway, the whole details. And
The wilderness wipes. That's what I did, for sure.
Oh, those, I haven't heard of those. That sounds like it's made purpose made
Like,
for this.
yeah, they're kind of bougie. I think it's
Sea
sea
to
to summit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought you meant leaves. Like leaves from a tree was wilderness.
No.
Wilderness wipes. Speaking of things that you wouldn't bring again, were there any things that you would bring that you didn't that you wish you had brought?
I have answers, but I'm gonna let others go.
Didn't bring that we wish we had brought. I'll jump in and say I went the other way. I brought way too much stuff and I was shedding stuff the whole way.
Oh,
It
yeah,
wasn't,
so
I don't think I left anything at home.
I would have brought a better.
Did anyone else have a chair? Well, you kept that with you the whole time, right?
No, I sent it back.
Chris was very comfortable, let's say. He had enough stuff with him to be very comfortable on this.
Chris is in his chair drinking a beer. Rob's standing up.
Not far off.
Carley, what are the things that you would have brought?
I mean, every day, multiple times a day, I was like, the next time we do this, I will have it. It was a kickstand. And he made fun of me. I said no, and it's true. I didn't see anyone else really with kickstands. But like,
They're heavy.
not a tree to just lean your bike on. They say there will be, and there's just mostly not. And I mean, I would get off many times throughout the day to go to the bathroom or something. And I do believe that's what created part of the failure in my fork mounted cage bags, because you lean your bike down gently every time you went to the bathroom or something, but it would rub. So I would get a kickstand, and I think I would get the click stand. It's very lightweight, portable.
Never heard of that.
A kickstand.
Yeah, is that the one that goes up against the top tube
Yeah.
and then folds up? Yeah.
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 I knew some people out there had them.
I would take a long tail bike for Rowdy. Making the bike work with a short was a hassle. I think it would have been a little bit more comfortable and stable with a long tail, which is on the way. So
Nice.
Nice.
Do you have any things that you would have brought or
Well,
would not have brought?
I'm glad Carly mentioned the kickstands. I'd forgotten about that. And
Every day.
I've just put a note down. Absolutely. The other thing that I took with me, that I had a GoPro that went kind of haywire on me and I couldn't use it very much. So I take a new other GoPro or DJI camera. That'd be the only thing different. Everything else in my kit, I think I'd do the same. The one thing I would change would be in my water system. I had a Revelite bag and I had the Apodura 3-liter water bladder with the hose that comes up. I'm never doing that again because it was just too hard to draw water up from the bottom of your frame. And that space is far more useful for food than water. You can carry water other ways. So I would use that space for food. So I would leave that at home.
First couple of days, we'd be riding together and we'd stop and I'd see Rob over there with his head on the handlebars. And I'm like, oh, that poor guy, he's dying. And then come to find out later, he's trying to drink from that bladder and he has to put his face down on his bike to get it. And I had that same bladder and that same thing. I never used it. I had to finally send it home. Yeah.
funny, like, because Carly and I had hydro flask kind of bladder, but we put ours on the top tube area of the bike bag and ran the hose. It was long enough. I mean, I could wrap it around my handlebar. It was too long as our reservoir. I didn't have any trouble with it. I thought it was a great way to carry the water lower for us. And it also happened to like act as a insulating barrier. So it was like usually my not as warm water hot days.
Water for
You'd be purifying water from streams.
Do you guys find you were doing that a lot? That's what Doug was wondering about.
I purify all.
That was a daily activity, probably.
Yeah, several times a
for
day.
the most part. We had like in like horrible fashion. We didn't really test our water filters before going. We had the platypus quick draw. We got like a bad batch for both when we RMA'd them on the trail. and went to a Sawyer squeeze. Just one. They sent us new quick draws and they work wonderfully. I don't have any. We just got a bad batch and they rectified it, so I'm okay with that. I would probably take it again. Just test your water filters before going, and maybe test them before like leaving town if you pick a new one up or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I did filter all my water, but I actually filtered it 3 times. I used a Sawyer squeeze. I used the tablets the tablets I had would filter or purify your water within 30 minutes. And then I also used a ultraviolet light pen that was USB rechargeable. So I did 3 methods each time. I'm just sensitive to water changes, and I wasn't taking any changes with water, and I'm glad.
Yeah. Carl asked, did any of you carry anything in a backpack? I know Rob and Chris, you did. I can't remember if Carly, Aaron, you guys had backpacks, except for Chris, you had a backpack for a little bit when your pannier broke, right?
Yeah, I had Epidural makes this tiny little backpack that folds up into like a size of a deck of cards. I brought that with me. And when my rack broke, I used it then, but that's the only time. Actually, not true. I picked up a hydration pack in Grants. When you're going through the desert, you need extra water, and that had some capacity. So that was the only time I really had anything on my back. But Rob, you had a backpack most of the time, didn't you?
Yeah, originally it was just a little, I think it was a 10-liter backpack from Decathlon, it was a little tiny thing, but the plan was to use it to go into grocery stores and carry my stuff out. But this is where, if I had gotten rid of that water bladder, I would have had more space to put the food. I wouldn't have had to wear it on my back so much. But I'm glad I had it. Like, I would definitely take it again. It was super convenient to have. So it weighed next to nothing, a couple ounces, so worth taking.
Yeah, that little backpack that you had, Chris, saved you when your rack broke.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing to have, but maybe not use all the time. Carla, are you gonna say something?
I brought a little one. I think early on I rode with it, and the thinking was just put your different coat layers back there so it's accessible. But it's light. There's not weight on you. It's just your coats. But the thing is, it's like a house. If you've got space, you're gonna put heavy things in there. And like day 2, I'm like, why do I hurt? Oh, because I put all this stuff in this backpack. So and then I just stopped with that. But I carried that in my bag for the very long water stretches. I knew I was gonna need it later to put multiple water bottles in there for the basin and then for New Mexico when we didn't have a lot of water. I wanted to have extra liter capacity. And to me, I thought, I guess it's the backpack, but just for that day or 2. But otherwise, I didn't wear a backpack.
I wore Black Diamond running vests, like a 20-liter, I think. It's where I carried like my electronic cables and stuff because I had a horrible habit of walking in somewhere needing to charge something but leaving it on the bike. So my backpack was always with me. And then I kept my layers in that bag. It has the hydration runner bottles, flasks, I guess, on the front chest pieces. That was really handy and useful. It's usually where I kept my mixed electrolytes in that smaller container.
You wore that the whole time.
Yeah,
didn't you?
It didn't bother me much. I didn't really have trouble keeping things out of it. I did stop using I think Chris mentioned this too before, that when we started the ride, I think I had all my water filled up for no real apparent reason because there was water everywhere. I did that for several days before realizing I don't need to carry 8 liters right now. I need where's the next water? I just need to get to there.
By the way, speaking of water, I know at least for Chris and Rob, the first week or 2 I remember was really wet. What did you guys do? Would you do anything different to try to keep yourself dry? I mean, it was really rainy and it was almost depressing because you guys didn't see the sun for so long. I don't know if Carly,
Right.
you had a similar experience somewhere, but I remember that in particular. What do you guys do for rain gear and trying to stay dry. Speaking of saddle sore, it's probably the number one cause, right?
Yeah, Ross asked that question, so great.
Yeah. I'll start. I brought a Showers Pass jacket. I forget which one exactly. I actually accidentally left it in a cow pasture in New Mexico, and I missed that thing. But it was great because it rolled up pretty tight, but it was really roomy, and I could put a puffy jacket underneath, because a lot of those days when it's raining, you know, it was 40 degrees out there and it was just freezing, especially at camp or whatever. I brought rain pants and wore those. I think they were just the Gore like C5 shake dry equivalent for pants, which are great because they fold up to nothing. And I wore those a bunch up in the first couple of days up in Alberta. And then after that, I wore smart wool long johns under my mountain bike shorts. And that after I think we went across the US border, the rain pants never came out again. That was good for anything. I think so. It was probably good for down to, you know, 50, 45 degrees. And then gloves were the perpetual issue. I've never found a good pair of waterproof gloves. So,
Carley, Aaron, did you guys have any waterproof glove solutions?
I know that I packed like rubber kitchen sink type, but not like the yellow big cleaning ones, but like, what are those called?
Well, just like
Latex.
doctor's
Latex.
nitrate, latex.
Yeah, the nitrate gloves. Yep.
Certainly helps keep your hands warm, even though everything's wet.
I didn't use them though, but I packed them. I brought hand heaters for the first, I mean, because for me, thermoregulation, and I just know me, and my hands get cold and then things shut down for me. And so for me, I knew I packed some hand heaters, and they were on deck, but I was using them sparingly because I was like, how long is this rain going to go for? So I didn't want to use the 2 that I packed in the first day. I had like rain covers over my regular gloves. And then I was ready to put those hand heaters in there, but I just never did. I don't know, like one thought I've had that I've come across other videos is some people have like Ziploc bags or like bread bags that they've just helps with the waterproofness, but over their feet but I just don't know what the practicality of that is, but.
Yeah, Ross was just saying Z-packs make a nice rain mitt that you can put over your gloves.
Okay.
By the way, Gordon asked, how do you keep your feet dry? And Rob, I remember a scene where you guys were both crossing the river and you stopped to put the bags on your feet and Chris didn't. Was that always the case? Or Chris, you just let your feet get wet and Rob stay dry? Or how did that work out?
That was the only time I did that. And I think, if I remember right, my feet still ended up getting wet because it was still too deep to avoid. I didn't really answer the question for myself on the rain gear, but I had a North Face jacket and I had some Eddie Bauer rain pants. And the pants stood up great. The jacket, it's an older jacket. It probably could have been more waterproof, but we had so much rain. Like there's a certain point when even waterproof gear just is waterlogged and it just can't keep you dry. So it was about trying to use wool and down and just trying to keep yourself warm while being wet. And I suffered with the hands, like my hands were frozen all the time. And in Fernie at the 7-Eleven, I was trying to buy a pair of dish gloves to put over my riding gloves. And they didn't have any. This was my first experience with a little bit of trail magic is they had like almost like a Kentucky Fried Chicken in this 7-Eleven. I'm not sure what was going on there, but they went, one of the store attendants just went back to their food prep area and grabbed me a handful of rubber gloves and gave them to me.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, they didn't have any for sale, so he just gave them to me. It was like, great. So I wore those a bit, and they did help, but you still need that kind of air gap, and the rubber gloves don't give you that, right? Like, sure, you're not getting rained on, but you're still getting cold.
Yeah, for my feet, we took like the neoprene booties for
Water sports.
like they're the the sandal ones, like they're kind of tall. I mean, your feet still get wet, you're just gonna sweat, but they kept my feet really warm on some bad days. Downside is they stink. basically.
You wore those while biking?
What?
You wore those while biking or just when crossing?
Yeah, I just wore them as a layer under my shirt.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind
My
of like
feet
a
still got
wetsuit
cold.
for your feet. Nice. So Chris, you just had wool socks and that was your solution, right?
I think I had 3 or 4 different weights of wool socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, from I like the lightweight I wore on a daily basis to slightly thicker to, like the giant wool hiking socks. And yeah, they did the job. Feet got wet, but it was fine.
Stayed warm.
Yep.
So there are a few questions about cooking and food. And one thing that always stands out to me is how you guys always seem to have access to coffee. In fact, I think like half of the episodes of Chris's videos started off with him making coffee. But what was your cooking? Describe your cooking situation. I know you guys had a lot of junk food at convenience stores, but how much did you make meals? These are some questions from Ross. Carly, you want to start with that one?
So my cook kit was a BSR, I think, little stove, with a titanium pot, just boiled water, and then I would do on some fancier nights the backpacker meals, but you could only put like 2, maybe 3 in your pack. I mean, and they're expensive too, so. Otherwise, it was, like a rice side, a tuna packet for dinners, or packing out sandwiches, bagels, at the hotels. If they had a, breakfast bar, I took 2 bagels to go, and that would be in my front salsa bags for, later in the day.
Yep.
But yeah.
So like Carly and I didn't shop together for each other or for like trick.
Oh.
That was kind of our separate things.
All right.
There's so much nuance to it. Like one day you might be into this and the next day you're not. And, so we just wandered we got to take turns. Someone would be outside watching the bikes and Rowdy, and one person would go in, and one person would come out with their stuff. And then the next person would go in and come back out and like, oh, you got that. And you go back in. Very helpful, kind of like a reminder of each other what we needed or wanted or whatever. But it also just meant it took us twice as long to resupply anywhere.
Yeah.
Mostly I ate like the freeze-dried meals. Like I think the most I carried was like 4. And we would basically eat out where we could to fill the gaps. And then we just happened to like find those meals in enough time to keep that supply going, so I never really ran out.
Carly, your mention of tuna reminded me of Chris's favorite meal that Jeff and I, every time we heard it, we wanted to gag. Can you describe that again, Chris?
So I didn't do any.
No.
Describe it just for
I
Jeff.
was gonna make
See what
it-
happens.
So it's just a matter of what you find at a grocery store, at a gas station. And, I was a big fan of ramen because, you could crunch it. It didn't matter if it got crumpled up. In fact, it's probably better if it got squished and broken up. It had a lot of salt. And then I looked for protein, and the best thing was sometimes you can find little sleeves of pre-cooked chicken, but those are rare. So mostly it was just like the packets of tuna. So yeah, so my cook kit was a Jetboil Mini Mo. And I wanted something that was a little bit more, open, that I could cook in, I could simmer, because I had great plans of all these different recipes I was going to make. If I was cooking out in the wild, I didn't care. I just wanted food. And so, yeah, it was usually a base of ramen, some tuna, some mustard packets, some teriyaki or soy packets if I had them, sometimes some cut up beef jerky or Slim Jims, and that was dinner.
Rob, did he ever share this with you?
No, and I didn't go asking either. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I never asked.
Have you eaten it since the ride, Chris?
God, no.
But the coffee part, like we just did instant coffee for the most part. Typically adding, so like we packed protein and like recovery stuff endurance athlete kind of stuff. We also carried tailwind, like the whole friggin' bag size, massive amount. Or Carley called it go juice for us.
Yeah, the tailwind was the electrolytes during the day. Yeah, and the protein powder was for dinner after our backpacker meal. Just added protein before bed.
Nice.
One of my favorite memories is having dinner with Chris and Rob, though, at the Pinnacle, was it Pinnacle Campground? I mean, just thinking about dinners, I remember seeing your guys' dinners that night. We all sat at that campground and picnic table and looked at each other's meals, like, oh, okay, that's your jam. Okay.
Are any of you guys vegan by chance? Ross is asking. Anyone has experienced how a vegan would do on the trail?
No.
No, I thought of the question in the chat.
Super Vegan is the guy that did it in the movies, and I think it's out there again this year.
Oh, okay. Might be a good thing.
There is someone that does it. Yeah. I don't know how, but yeah.
Nice. One thing that kind of surprised me, and Mark brought this up, is through all the video, switching gears a bit, there were very few wildlife encounters. I heard stories, but did you guys ever run into? I know Chris, you never ran into a bear, but you know people who did. But did anyone else run into crazy wildlife out there?
Rob.
Yeah, this goes to my favorite song too. Very day one, I somehow between Toronto and Banff, I lost my bear bell, so I had to make noise as I'm going down the trail. So I'm singing a Gordon Lightfoot song called Carefree Highway as I'm riding down this trail. And I come around a corner and there's a grizzly bear, even though a grizzly bear about 100 yards up the trail in front of me on the road. So I came to a stop, and she got within about 30 feet of me, but she never really looked me in the eye. She was like sniffing the woods, and I have my bear spray out, ready to go if I needed to. But thankfully she just kind of turned and walked into the woods, but it got way too close for me. I was screwed the rest of the day because my adrenaline spiked so high that I had the big adrenaline crash afterwards. And it kind of messed me up. So that was an experience. And then Chris, we had rattlesnakes.
Yeah, well, and you and I had a moose encounter too on day 2. Everything happened on day 2, and that was when we were playing leapfrog, and I came up around a corner. I was ahead of you at that point, and I came up around a corner. There's a bridge, and there's a moose on a bridge, and so that it wanted to get to my side, and I wanted to get to its side, and we played this sort of standoff game. I finally backed down because I didn't want to get tangled up with the moose, and you came flying by and rode right by the thing. I was like, all right, well, I guess,
Yeah,
it's cool.
day 2. Anyone who's planning the ride, just prepare yourself for day 2. Because I know Tyler also almost ran into a bear on day 2 on the way down, right?
Yeah.
Before we go any further, Chris didn't talk about the rattlesnake, but just south of Wamsutter, I was chasing Chris this day. He was he's 15 or 20 minutes ahead of me up the road. And he had stopped and he said, "Hey, did you see the rattlesnake on the road?" And he goes, "I thought it was a stick, but I ran over it." And I hadn't, but I was I was borderline bonking that day. Anyways, we kept riding. About 5 minutes later, I'm riding kind of heads down, trying to just not bonk. And I hear the rattle of a rattlesnake just as my cranks go past it on the road. And it's right there, right down by my foot as I go past it. Now, thankfully, I was going fast enough that it didn't strike, but it scared the heck out of me. And it made me really wake up for the rest of the day to make sure I was paying attention to the wildlife on the road. But that was a scary moment.
And Carley and Aaron, I wonder, given that you're with a dog, how that maybe changed the calculus of animal encounters.
Yeah.
So
Question.
we, like, on the border for our departure, we stayed at an Airbnb, and there was a black bear there, so just outside of Glacier National Park. I saw a cinnamon bear in Wyoming.
Idaho. It was Idaho.
It was Idaho. We rode through a herd of cattle. They were, taking down the road. We had to ride through that. How did Rowdy do with all that? For the most part, I was seeing, I think he might be blind or something. I don't know. But I would see the wildlife before Rowdy did in a lot of circumstances. I think more than half the time he just missed it completely. And then when he did notice like deer, especially deer, he would very perk up. Cows he just didn't care for. It was definitely a concern, especially for bear encounters and stuff, because I just don't know how he's going to react. I went down that rabbit hole before the trip, and it was never anything good. So I just kind of put it in the back of my mind.
Yeah, but he stayed like, on leash and with us and in the back most of the day. When he did get out, it would be when we were going up a hill and he'd be on leash and we'd be going pretty slow and he'd run. Yeah, we did mess up like day 2 where I went out to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and I thought, oh, just come on out with me, and what was in the middle of the meadow on a full moon but a deer. And off he went, and he did not return for another 20 minutes, and he went into some thicket. And I thought, well, day 2, we lost the dog, and that's how that goes. I mean, it was quite so. We, learned as we went a bit too, I guess. But don't let your guard down in the middle of the night when you think you're just gonna go and come back real quick. Be vigilant all the time. That's probably when you need to carry your bear spray. And all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
So Dave, I think it's time for the lightning round. There have been questions in the chat. We won't get to all of them. I think we can ask our riders, and I'm going to volunteer on their behalf, that they will answer any unanswered questions and try to send out a BCC email. So make sure that if you've got a question that we haven't answered, that your email was submitted as part of the calendar invite. But Dave, let's get the lightning rod out.
Yeah, let's do this. So we're gonna. By the way, Chairman just asked our favorite question, Jeff, about managing the videos and whatnot. But we'll write you about that. So yeah, the lightning round. We're gonna ask. We just want best and worst of the trail. I'll mention the topic, and first thing that comes to your mind, maybe go Chris, Rob, Carley, and Aaron, and just tell us what it is. So for number 1 is best trail angel, or I guess trail magic. Chris.
So that's skewed for me because I had a bunch of personal help along the way. I think for best that we randomly encountered, I'd put the camp manager at Holland Lake who cooked us dinner with bratwurst and pasta salads, and gave us a place to stay when the campground was full. So that's it for me.
Rob.
I agree with Holland Lake, and I would add the woman that runs the general store in Wise River. I needed a USB charger, and she gave me her personal one from her living room.
Oh wow. Carley.
I echo Chris's guy at Holland Lake because he gave us lighter fluid to start our fire because it was just raining and there was just no way to start it. I mean, it was raining, not just raining. And I echo Wise River, and I'll throw in also the network out there is amazing. Aaron ran into a mechanical in Abiquiu in New Mexico that potentially was going to end our trip. I mean, I don't know how we were going to get out of it. He posted on the Facebook Tour Divide group, oh no, mechanical. Does anyone have any ideas? And Sandra came out and she was like, oh, well, I'm driving out from Albuquerque. I'm in Albuquerque and you're in Abiquiu. I don't know how far apart that is, but it's not close. And she's like, I'm coming through tomorrow. I will drop you off a new tire.
Yeah, it's not that close. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Aaron, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that was probably the wildest trail magic because it was not but an hour after I posted that they were like, oh, I'm coming through.
Yeah.
The host that we found was an older gentleman that kind of pulled over on the side of the road as we were coming into town. It was like, hey, I got this place up on the hill. You guys can stay. And he was super welcoming and a generous host for putting us up for the extra day.
Yep.
He plucked us off the road. We were just going to go camp somewhere. And he was like, come in my car, come to my house. And we did.
By the way, Kathy, and I can't remember I don't know how to say her last name. It starts with an S. Was the person who owns that Mercantile that Rob, I think you were mentioning. But that brings up the next one, which is best mercantile or convenience store. Is it Kathy's store? Pretty famous on the trail.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, go ahead, because I'm thinking.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually so Kathy, I think, is the Mercantile in Ovando, I think you're referring to.
Yeah,
yeah.
we were talking about.
Wise River is a slightly smaller one. It's just like a small, like there's like 8 or 9 houses there. There's not much there, and 2 bars. That would be it for me. She was just generous and had everything I needed at the right time.
Yeah.
That was I made that category, you know, favorite mercantile convenience store because of the Wise River Mercantile. Wow. But I was curious, what others' experiences were. They were amazing. I mean, yes. So yeah, they were just really amazing. I think it's a couple of sisters that run that mercantile, and yeah, they were amazing.
Chris, did you have any?
I guess mine, I don't have any good stories about stores. I think my favorite would probably be in, Rob, what was the place we got the barbecue? Sealy Lake?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There was a store there that was like grocery store, hardware store, everything store. And, I think we got coffee there. We got, of course, we got food. We got food for the road. We got like all sorts of stuff there. So I guess that'd be mine.
I'm going to skip through these little best bike shop. Chris.
Either Pinedale or Butte. They were both really good to us.
Yeah.
I guess Pinedale. If it is geared up.
Oh yeah, I remember these guys making extra hours for the riders.
Yeah, so I got a flat on a Sunday, and I gave him a call. He had just worked on the bike the day before and got a flat. That was a catastrophic flat, and he canceled his Sunday plans and came down to the store. And not only did he fix the flat, but he had given me I had inserts put in, cush cores, and there's some technique to changing a tire. And he says, you know what? These are new to you. Come on upstairs and I'm going to teach you how to change your tire and show you some tricks.
Wow, amazing.
So yeah, he really went, above and beyond. So
Aaron, do you have a favorite bike shop?
Absolute Bikes in Salida, for sure.
We came into town just covered in mud and our bikes and gear. And they were super eager. We're like, no, let us at least like wash our bikes off before we get off. It was also the place where we didn't break it. It was struggling to lift the bike up fully loaded on their bike.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think employees invited us to his home for the night to have a place to stay. I mean, they really 100%. So
amazing. Best and worst section of trail. Rob, you want to start?
So best and worst. The best would be probably the high Rocky Mountain single track on day one. That big flowing single track was pretty amazing. And then the worst for me was I think it was called Medicine Lodge Road. And that was between Wise River and Lima. It was just terrible gravel. It was just like plowing through gravel for 100 miles.
Oh gosh.
Well, 60.
Chris, best and worst section.
Worst is easy. It's the section of the CDT that they added in this year down in New Mexico. I think I spent 8 hours pushing my bike because it just, it wasn't rideable. And it was dumb. Like there's no reason for it. GDMBR goes straight. It's dumb.
We want to see Chris get really emotional on video. Watch that section, watch that video.
Keep talking about it, I'll get emotional now. Best section, anywhere along that first section up in Canada, it was just everywhere. I mean, the whole route, everywhere you look, every day was new scenes and amazing scenery. But I think that first day of like some of the double track that was going up and down through the hills and crossing streams and bridges, I think that was it for me.
Yeah, Carley.
Best for me was all of Colorado. I'm from Colorado, and I always never went up in the mountains as a kid. So I was very much looking forward to that section to see all these Salida and Breckenridge and just these high altitude mountain vistas. And it was we'd come through a pass and it was like biking through a Bob Ross painting. or some. I mean, it was like you were moving through a landscape, a painting landscape. I don't know. Colorado did it for me for sure. And worst section is coming into Pie Town. There was like crazy ridiculous sports for like 15 miles or more, and it was like New Mexico, and it was 12 o'clock. And anyway, all of that combined just made it the worst section for me.
Yeah.
Both of mine are in New Mexico. Pytown was the worst.
The washboards.
Yeah, the washboards.
Coming
sucked.
into
You couldn't
Pytown.
find a good line.
Yeah.
And
It ended with a good pie, though, right? At least.
It ended in pie, and that's the thing about the Great Divide. You could be like, ugh, and then the very next moment, you're like, yes.
Yeah.
And then New Mexico, like northern New Mexico, like I just was very surprised at the climate and the environment. Blew me away. I think New Mexico was just the most surprising in all regards.
Yeah. Favorite bike packing hack? Carley, why don't you start with that one?
Okay, it's not one I did out there, but I'm researching because I am planning to ride again. And what I've learned for a hack is like definitely a water bottle for cleaning your bike chain, keeping that clean when you're not near a hose, which is, a lot, or not near a car wash. Some people have these little extra attachments, so that would be a good hack, I think.
Aaron,
Yeah, getting the crate onto the bike with Old Man Mountain and some zip ties. That was my hack together method.
well, you never had problems with Rowdy flying off, huh?
We did drop him once.
Okay.
But for the most part, yes, he did very good. He loves surfing back there.
Amazing what zip ties can do. Rob, any good hacks?
Not really good hacks, but I definitely carried more zip ties and more volley straps just for spares.
Chris?
Mine's not a gear hack, it's a nutrition hack. The day before the tour started, I was out on the tour and on the trail, and we met a bunch of people, and someone there told me a great source of salt along the way was mustard packets. And I thought he was absurd and ridiculous, and then I tried it, and it was awesome. They're great. I'd pick them up every convenience store.
I've yet to try that one on the bike. Maybe this year I'll do it.
It works. I vouch for that. It works.
Yeah.
But there's a certain,
I guess there's a lot of sodium in there, and it's a different flavor palette than you're used to, because you're eating sticky sweet stuff all day long, because you're trying to keep the energy up and the sugar and the calories, and then you throw the mustard in, and it's it's vinegary, and it's all different. So, and a huge source of sodium. So, works.
just don't do that with Dijon mustard. You learn, right?
Or no, Dijonnaise.
Dijonnaise. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixture of mustard and mayonnaise, and that was terrible.
This is also a hack. This is
The paint scraper or whatever it is.
yeah.
Very nice.
Putty knife. Yeah, I was told in Pinedale that I should be carrying one of those, and this is one I found on the trail. So if you drop this, I found it. It's yours.
Yeah.
And, to Doug's question, that's to get the peanut butter mud off.
It's very efficient at it. I mean, it's just because you can just stick it. Like you can slide off that mud. Yeah, it's a good hack.
It's real because there's not always a stick or something out there. So yeah. And I would add to that a stiff, like one of those chain brushes that's like Park Tools makes and Pedro's make it, and that's very stiff bristles for the chain. Because as Rob and I learned pretty early on, if the chain gets saturated with peanut butter mud, it just falls right off. And Rob, my trail angel, sat there with a stick and poked out the mud from every single link. So save yourself that and get one of those brushes.
I feel like it had pretty strong. Like Doug's asking if popsicle sticks would work, but it probably wouldn't, right? Those break too easily, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite town? Rob, you want to go first?
I think Butte. I thought Butte was kind of a cool town. I would like to have spent a day there and and seen a little bit more of it.
Carly, you
For
got
me, Salida, for sure. I mean, the CDT comes in, of course, the Tour Divide comes through, something else goes through. It's like
Colorado Trail.
Colorado Trail, and then it's just nestled amongst. There's something unique about it. The locals explained it that like the winters don't get hammered with snow or super cold. Very artsy there. Had a lot of had a river running through it, so it seemed like the place to go. Had a good restaurant scene, just cool.
Aaron, you look like you're agreeing with
Yeah,
that.
I was in agreement. We
All
had a wonderful dinner there.
Yeah.
Wonderful culture around the town.
Chris, you got one?
I think maybe Fernie. If you're talking about places I'd want to go back to and just spend some time, like every other car there had a bunch of mountain bikes, and I've heard after the fact that it's a ton of single track and good places to ride there. And we found a great little pub there, and seemed like if it wasn't 40 degrees and freezing rain, it'd be a fun place to hang out.
Nice. Well, the last question, not really a lightning round question, but what's next for you guys? What do you guys have going on this year? Rob, you want to start off?
Sure. I'm in negotiations to do the Tour Divide again this year.
Oh, wow.
I have unfinished business.
The whole thing, or are you picking up?
Whole thing. If I do, I'm gonna do the whole
Right.
thing.
Nice. Well, we'll be dot tracking you, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, what about you?
Doing Unbound 200 with one of our moderators here, and the Rift Gravel in Iceland with the other moderator here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Aaron, you have something lined up?
I have a motorcycle. I'm thinking about doing some of the BDRs, backcountry discovery routes, through some states that someone else might be in.
Carly, sounds like you might meet Aaron somewhere on the trail.
Yeah, I have submitted my letter of intent to race the Tour Divide.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was a great preview this last summer, and I'm deep in research, rewatching old Matt Ryder adventure videos, just putting my experience together out there this last year. Now it gets in your heart.
Yeah, start from
Yeah.
Banff this time. Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm so happy we have a reason to dog track again. Not that I wouldn't be doing it anyway, but very exciting. That's it. If anyone wants to come off mute and say anything, feel free. If there are any questions left out there that we didn't get to answer, we'll go back and try to find them and send you answers to those questions. I know there's a bunch of people that are preparing to do the ride as well. Maybe you'll see Rob and Carly on the trail.
Yeah, and if you know you're doing it, maybe put in the chat and let us know who's doing it.
Yeah, and how to reach out to us too. Like we should put out our contact information. I'll add that to the chat for us if you want to get in touch with us. But yeah, if we see you on the trail, oh my gosh, I love this community. That's what I'm hoping to keep building. So, yeah.
Definitely. Are any of the riders that were listening in doing it again this year? Mary?
I think we're looking at 20, what year is it now? 25, 26, right, Schroeder?
That's one of the thoughts right there. But we're doing Ragbri this year, right?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And triple bypass. I haven't told you that, Mark, but triple bypass. That's supposed to be a good one.
I've done that.
There you go.
Okay.
Where's the triple bypass take place?
Evergreen, Colorado to Vail.
All right. Wow, that's gonna be amazing. I posted this in before, but I'll just do it again. There's if anyone hasn't seen the videos from Carly, Rob, or Chris, Carly and Rob are in the middle of publishing their videos. So you guys are about a third of the way through your adventure. I think Carley, maybe you're a little further. Chris's whole adventure is up there on YouTube, so feel free to take a look at that. Terry has a good question. Are there any Facebook groups to keep in touch with? Well, I stay on the Dot Tracker Facebook group. There's also a GDMBR Facebook group. They're really active when the tour divide is going on, and it's really fun because people are posting photos along the way, so you get to see what's happening on the ground periodically besides just watching the dot. So yeah, check out those two.
For anyone that's out there this year, there's a Divide Riders class of 24. That's just a, it's I think it may even be private, but it's for anyone that was out on the GDMBR or Tour Divide this year. So if you're out there and you're not part of that group, join up and throw stories back and forth. I guess we can post information for that too.
Terry's gonna have some mustard. Luck with that. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This was fun. We'll see you out on the trail.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave and Jeff.
Take care.
Bye.
So as you probably heard, a lot of us were impacted by people along the way. There's some really great people that we got to know. People, merchants that run stores, to just regular people going down the side of the road, wanting to know who you are, what you're doing, and welcoming you into their homes if necessary, or if they felt like it. So it's a really good experience. My piece of advice would be is if you're planning on racing the Tour Divide and you've never ridden the Tour Divide, I would consider touring it first. You're going to miss too many things. And also, the best laid plans can change. So you want to experience the good side of the Tour Divide, and touring it is a great way to do it. And then go back and race it on another time once you have that familiarity too. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the Q&A, and in the future, we'll probably have another one with some more details and different adventures as we go along. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.